This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Tuesday, October 29th, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
1 week until Election Day, and it's full steam ahead on the campaign trail.
When we win this election, we will have your back.
I'm Clayton Neville.
The U.S. says North Korea has sent more troops to Russia for fighting in Ukraine. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
The Washington Post loses more than 200,000 subscribers. I'm Pamela Furrer.
Hundreds of ballots have been destroyed in Washington state after a drop-off ballot box was set on fire. I'm Jackie Quinn.
On Wall Street, investors get earnings today from Google parent Alphabet after the closing bell. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
Popular fitness app may have unwittingly given away the exact position of world leaders, plus spiraling into the Great Depression. A look back at this day in history. All ahead on America in the Morning. Time is winding down on the campaign trail ahead of next Tuesday's presidential election. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports it's the final push in the battleground states for both campaigns.
Between the two presidential candidates, their running mates, and even their spouses, battleground states are being converged on for the final days of campaigning. VP candidate Senator J.D. Vance held two campaign rallies in Wisconsin yesterday and said it was time to return former President Trump to the Oval Office. He even encouraged early voting, which Trump is promoting too, but he once was an adamant critic of voting early.
And importantly, as you all know better than I do, we have no idea what the weather's going to be like on November the 5th in the state of Wisconsin. So if we can bank as many votes early, we ought to do that. Now,
Vance was asked about criticism over a joke at the expense of Puerto Rico by a comedian at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally this week.
I've heard about the joke. I haven't actually seen the joke that you mentioned, but I think that it's telling that Kamala Harris's closing message is essentially that all of Donald Trump's voters are Nazis, and you should get really pissed off about a comedian telling a joke.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, was rallying with industry workers in Wisconsin.
Kamala Harris and I have a plan to build the American industrial strength powered by American workers. And I promise you, when we win this election, we will have your back just like you've had our back every step of the way.
Vice President Harris took to social media encouraging Puerto Ricans registered to vote to cast ballots in the election.
There is so much at stake in this election for Puerto Rican voters and for Puerto Rico. And this election is not just a choice between Donald Trump and me. It is a choice between two very different visions for our nation.
Harris and Governor Walz rallied together last night in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and President Obama campaigned for Harris in Pennsylvania. As for former President Trump, he held a rally in Georgia last night.
With your support on November 5th, we will achieve success that no one can imagine. We will have the strongest economy, the most secure borders, the safest cities.
Polling shows a neck-and-neck race, and point differentials vary depending on which polls you look at, but experts believe it will be a close race. The candidates agree. VP Harris expected to give a speech in D.C. today before hitting three battleground states tomorrow, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Trump slated to rally in Allentown, Pennsylvania today before holding two rallies tomorrow, the first in North Carolina, then it'll be off to Wisconsin. I'm Clayton Neville.
The Biden administration says more North Korean troops have been sent to Russia for the Ukraine war, and both the U.S. and United Nations have serious concerns. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports.
The deepening military cooperation between Russia and North Korea is a threat to both the Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic security.
Just 3 days ago, the Biden administration said it was possible more than 3,000 North Koreans were there. Now,
we believe that the DPRK has sent around 10,000 soldiers in total to train in eastern Russia. That will probably augment Russian forces near Ukraine over the next several weeks. A portion of those soldiers have already moved closer to Ukraine, and we are increasingly concerned that Russia intends to use these soldiers in combat or to support combat operations against Ukrainian forces in Russia's Kursk Oblast near the border with Ukraine.
Pentagon spokeswoman Sabrina Singh says the U.S. is now more worried Russia intends to either use those soldiers in combat or to support combat operations in the Kursk region.
Should DPRK soldiers be used on the battlefield, this would mark a further escalation and highlights President Putin's increasing desperation as Russia has suffered extraordinary casualties on the battlefield and an indication that Putin may be in more trouble than people realize. This move would have serious implications for Europe and Indo-Pacific security as well.
New NATO chief Mark Rutte said earlier some have already deployed there.
The deployment of North Korean troops represents one, a significant escalation in the DPRK's ongoing involvement in Russia's illegal war. Two, yet another breach of UN Security Council resolutions. And three, a dangerous expansion of Russia's war.
President Biden echoed that.
It's very dangerous, very dangerous.
The U.S. warns the North Koreans are fair game if they enter the fight. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Today's top stories are brought to you by Sleep Number. Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed? It's the only bed that lets you make each side firmer or softer whenever you want. Save 40% on the Sleep Number Special Edition smart bed. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com. Ballot boxes set on fire. The latest when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Many will not welcome the rain or snow, but let's welcome in AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
We are watching a robust system moving through the Rockies today. This system will produce widespread precipitation today into tonight with rain and snow showers through portions of Washington into Oregon, Idaho, and western Montana, as well as areas farther south like Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. But through Colorado and Wyoming, there will be a steadier rain and snow developing as the storm passes through. Some of the mountains of the region could see several inches, with higher elevations receiving a foot or more by Wednesday morning. This system will continue to produce rain through the northern plains into western Nebraska, into the Dakotas and northern Minnesota. It will be cold enough at night for some areas to mix with and even change to snow, especially in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Outside of the showers, the west will be largely dry with a cool afternoon. Highs will be in the 30s and 40s in the north to mid-70s in the southwest, which is about 5 to 15 degrees below the historical average. And the warm front associated with this same storm will also produce some showers out ahead of it first thing this morning through portions of northern Michigan. And there could even be a thunderstorm or two in there. And this will continue eastward into western New York this morning and into Vermont by late in the day. The rest of the Northeast will remain dry and cool with highs in the 40s and 50s, and the warm front will usher in warmer weather for tomorrow and Thursday. This is also providing a strong southerly wind through the plain states from Texas into Wisconsin, where some gusts could reach as high as 60 miles per hour. That's the weather across America. Casper, Wyoming will be getting a taste of winter weather today with rain changing to snow and a high of 38. Paducah, Kentucky will be quite warm today with plenty of sunshine and a high of 82. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
I'm John Trout. Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. The Washington Post has reportedly lost more than 200,000 subscribers after its decision not to endorse a presidential candidate this year. Pamela Furr reports there were key resignations at the newspaper as well.
It's also seen 3 members of its editorial board stepping down: Molly Roberts, David Hoffman, and Mila Mitra, although they do remain on the Post staff. It should be noted, though, this isn't the only well-known publication that has decided to stay out of the endorsement business this go-around. The Los Angeles Times had 3 of its editorial board members resign and protested its decision, and yesterday the USA Today decided it would not endorse a candidate for president this year after endorsing President Joe Biden in 2020. 2020. As for the Post, it had been endorsing for decades. So what's behind the decision? There's been conflicting reports that Will Lewis, publisher and CEO, made the decision to break the tradition at the paper not just this year, but in the future as well. And there are other reports saying it was actually Amazon founder and Post owner Jeff Bezos who made the decision. And it's had an obvious effect on readership. A report from NPR citing two sources at the Post say the newspaper has lost 8% of its 2.5 million paid subscribers. I'm Pamela Furr.
Authorities are investigating after multiple instances of ballot boxes being set on fire in Oregon and Washington state. Correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
The Clark County, Washington auditor calls it heartbreaking. A ballot drop box at a transit center was set on fire. Hundreds of ballots were ruined. First responders put out the fire. A fire suppression system failed to work. Investigators are reviewing surveillance video for a possible culprit. Across the Columbia River in Portland, Oregon, an explosive device was dropped inside a ballot drop box in the early morning hours. A fire suppression system there did work. With just 3 ballots damaged, those voters are being given replacement forms. I'm Jackie Quinn.
In sports, Monday Night Football, the Steelers beat the Giants 26-18. When we return on America in the Morning, the infinite money glitch after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, always putting clients' interests first. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after a winning day for stocks. The Dow was up 250 points yesterday. The S&P 500 index was up 15.
It's been pretty good. The S&P 500 just sort of hanging in there. For 2 weeks, it's been sideways, but we're starting to get overexcited. I mean, banks up another 2% today as a group.
CNBC's Mike Santoli. U.S. crude oil plunged yesterday. It's coming off its worst day in about 2 years after Israel's strike on Iran avoided its oil facilities. But that's great for U.S. drivers. AAA says prices at the pump in about 20 states are already below $3 a gallon for regular. As oil falls, companies that use lots of oil and lots of fuel climbed.
The new high list is essentially littered with travel and leisure names. People are still moving around. New highs again for Delta today. This is like a 4.5-year high for Delta. Remember, United's had great earnings last week. United's at a 4.5-year high. The cruise lines are all on fire. I mean, look at Carnival. That's a 2.5-year high. Same with Royal Caribbean.
CNBC's Bob Pisani. Ford out with slightly better than expected quarterly results after the closing bell last night. Shares popped and then dropped after hours. McDonald's shares were up more than 1% yesterday on word it was the onions behind the E. coli outbreak. Quarter pounder sandwiches going back on menus this week without onions in the 900 restaurants that pulled them. At least 75 people were sickened in 13 states. There was 1 death. JP Morgan is starting to sue those customers who allegedly stole thousands of dollars in that infinite money glitch. People were just putting in checks, some not real, and taking out cash.
Now, what normally happens is you deposit a check, and it takes several days for the entire thing to clear. It's tranched. You get a couple of bucks access at first, and then the rest of it later on. For a glorious few days in late August, a person could deposit a check, and in one case, it was $330,000, and the whole thing cleared.
And the perpetrators here then withdrew money against that cleared check.
They're taking it from ATMs. They're taking it from bank tellers. They were doing wires. Here you are. You have people using their actual bank accounts where the Social Security, their names, their ID, it's all on file. They're going to ATMs in which there is surveillance video of them doing the extractions, and they're thinking that somehow they're not going to get
away with this. Yeah.
CNBC banking reporter Hugh Sun with CNBC's Tyler Matheson. On today's watch list, busy for earnings, we get results from Google parent Alphabet, Visa, Chipotle, Pfizer, JetBlue, and McDonald's.
CNBC's Jessica Ettinger with Tuesday Business. When we return on America in the Morning, Black Monday. followed by Black Tuesday. A look back when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. An investigation by a news organization found the fitness app Strava has given away the location of President Biden and other leaders, an app used by some members of the Secret Service. Correspondent Norman Hall reports.
An investigation by the French newspaper Le Monde found that the highly confidential movements of President Joe Biden, presidential rivals Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and other world leaders can be easily tracked online through a fitness app that their bodyguards use. Le Monde found that some Secret Service agents used the Strava app, including in recent weeks after 2 assassination attempts on Trump. Strava is primarily used by runners and cyclists to record their activities and share their workouts with the community. The Secret Service told the newspaper that it doesn't believe the protection it provides was in any way compromised. I'm Norman Hall.
95 years ago today, the Roaring '20s came to a grinding halt after what was at the time an historic rise on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 12% on October 29th, the day recognized as when the stock market crashed and America entered the Great Depression. In the summer of 1932, the Dow was sitting at just 41 points. It would take 34 years for the Dow to return to its Roaring '20s highs, and today, 95 years later, the Dow closed at 42,387. America in the Morning for Tuesday, October 29th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay, senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
A comedian's comments warming up the crowd at Donald Trump's campaign rally at Madison Square Garden drew a strong reaction. I'm Jennifer King.
Both President Biden and Kamala Harris are blasting crude and racist rhetoric. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Global implications becoming more evident after weekend attacks in the Middle East. I'm Clayton Neville.
Minneapolis police say they failed the victim. Election lawsuits in 2 states head to the Supreme Court, and more troubles for a jailed music mogul. We'll have those stories.
Boeing could be getting out of the rocket business. I'm tech correspondent Chuck Palm.
James Cameron's film The Terminator turns 40 this week. I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. Southerly winds could prove dangerous for truckers today and high-profile vehicles moving east and west through Texas. Let's get the update. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
A powerful storm moving through the Rockies today is going to provide a strong southerly wind through the Plain States from Texas northward to Wisconsin today. These winds will increase throughout the day with gusts ranging from 40 to 60 miles per hour. This is also going to push temperatures well above historical average across the region with records broken yesterday. And then today, that is going to continue into Wisconsin and Illinois, where Milwaukee and Chicago are expected to break their record highs. The warm front associated with this same storm will also produce some showers out ahead of it first thing this morning through portions of northern Michigan, where there could be a thunderstorm or two in there. This will continue eastward to western New York this morning and into Vermont by late in the day. And the rest of the Northeast is going to remain dry and cool with highs in the 40s and 50s. And the warm front will usher warmer conditions in tomorrow and Thursday. The Southeast will remain dry today with plenty of sunshine and highs in the 70s and 80s. And then back at the storm in the Rockies, this system is going to produce widespread precipitation today and tonight with rain and snow showers through portions of Washington into Oregon, Idaho, and western Montana, and even areas farther south in places like Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. But through Colorado and Wyoming, we're looking at a steadier rain and snow developing as the storm passes through. Some of the mountains of the region could see several inches, with the higher elevations receiving a foot or more by Wednesday morning. This system is going to continue to produce rain through the northern plains from western Nebraska into the Dakotas and northern Minnesota, and then it could even turn cold enough at night for some areas to mix with and even change to snow. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
I'm John Trout. Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. With just a week before Election Day, Kamala Harris will be in Washington, where she's expected to draw nearly 20,000 people to a speech at the Ellipse, while Donald Trump will be in Pennsylvania. Both Harris and Trump will spend part of tomorrow in North Carolina. Puerto Rican pride and the island's slow recovery have become a flashpoint in the presidential campaign. As correspondent Jennifer King reports, there is backlash to the comments about Puerto Rico in Florida, a state with a large Puerto Rican population, and drew the ire of Florida Senator Rick Scott, Florida Congressman Darren Soto, and the leader of the Central Florida Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce. Those leaders reflected outrage at what was said at the Donald Trump rally in New York City. Audio courtesy of Orlando's WFTV.
This is what happens when you set up a rally that fosters hate. Minorities are talked of as vermin, as not human. This is what fascists do.
I'm really mad. I've been in the United States for 31 years, and never have I experienced such a degree of disrespect in my life on a national platform.
A comedian's comments warming up the crowd at Donald Trump's campaign rally at Madison Square Garden drew a strong reaction from some Puerto Ricans, including recording artist Bad Bunny, stand-up comedian Tony Hinchcliffe.
I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Later, Hinchcliffe said Latinos, they love making babies and that they don't use the pull-out method. Within minutes, Puerto Rican singer Bad Bunny signaled his support for Kamala Harris, sharing her plan for the island with his 45 million followers on Instagram.
Puerto Rico's economic future depends on urgently rebuilding and modernizing the island's energy grid.
Musicians Ricky Martin and Despacito artist Louis Fonsi also posted they were offended by the comment. In a statement, Trump campaign spokeswoman Daniel Alvarez said this joke does not reflect the views of President Trump or the campaign. I'm Jennifer King.
Meanwhile, both campaigns continue to attack the other, with Kamala Harris blasting the rally Donald Trump held in New York, alleging racial overtones, and the former president taking offense to being compared to Nazis. Correspondent Sagar Meghani reports.
The newest line from Kamala and her campaign is that everyone who isn't voting for her is a Nazi. We're Nazis. Years ago, my father, I had a great father, he's a tough guy. He used to always say, never use the word Nazi, never use that word. And he'd say, never use the word Hitler, don't use that word. It's like, I didn't even know why, don't use that word. And then I understood it.
Both President Biden and Kamala Harris are blasting crude and racist rhetoric at Donald Trump's New York rally at Madison Square Garden.
There's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico.
The Trump campaign's trying to distance itself from words like that from comedian Tony Hinchcliffe and others.
It's embarrassing. It's simply embarrassing.
From both the president and vice president.
Fans the fuel of hate and division, and that's why people are exhausted with him.
Harris says it's the point she's been making throughout the campaign.
There's a big difference between he and I.
They use that word freely, both words. They use it, he's Hitler. And then they say, he's a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. I'm the opposite of a Nazi.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
In the Middle East, Israel passed new laws restricting the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, with the Israeli government claiming that thousands of the UNRWA staff members actively participated in the Hamas attack last year that sparked the war in Gaza. Now, following Israel's retaliatory strikes against Iran, the United States has a warning for the Islamic Republic. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
The U.S. warning Iran of severe consequences if it attacks Israel or U.S. personnel in the region again. This after an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council over the weekend. It was called by Iran after Israel's airstrikes on that country.
The Iran-Israel relations and the situation in the entire Middle East region are on the edge. We are gravely concerned about the escalation caused by Israel's action. At the same time, we call on all parties to exercise calm and restraint.
UN representatives from China and other countries voiced serious concern.
Israel launched rounds of airstrikes against several sites in Iran, causing damage to facilities and casualties on the Iranian side. China condemns any violation of Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, reminded the Council how we got here.
Colleagues, not even 4 weeks ago, on October 1st, Iran launched nearly 200 ballistic missiles at Israel, with many targeting the country's most populous city, Tel Aviv. This brazen attack had the potential to kill hundreds of civilians, and it very well could have, were it not for the United States military assistance defending Israel.
Greenfield urged council members to stop pouring gasoline on a regional conflict, but Russia's UN ambassador accused the U.S. of provoking a new spiral of violence in the Middle East. Global implications, meanwhile, of the weekend events becoming more clear. Oil prices fell 6% on Monday. I'm Clayton Neville.
Among the stories we're covering next on America in the Morning, purging the voter rolls. After these messages. I'm John Trout. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. In a follow-up to a story we reported yesterday, Minneapolis police, bowing to mounting pressure, have arrested a man who shot his neighbor but was not taken into custody despite 3 outstanding warrants for his arrest. Heavily armed police and SWAT teams surrounded the home of John Salchak, and an hours-long standoff led to the 54-year-old being taken into custody after police used heavy machinery to tear holes into the upper floor of his house. Salchak, who has a history of mental illness, now faces numerous charges, including stalking and second-degree attempted murder. Salchak allegedly shot his neighbor who was pruning a tree on his own property. At a news conference, Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara admitted the case was never handled well, saying, quote, "We failed this victim 100%. America in the Morning continues. Republicans in a battleground state are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to block counting of some provisional ballots in Pennsylvania. Correspondent Norman Hall has this.
Republicans on Monday asked the U.S. Supreme Court for an emergency order in Pennsylvania that could result in thousands of votes not being counted in this year's election in the battleground state. At issue are provisional ballots cast by Pennsylvania voters whose mail ballots are rejected for not following technical procedures in state law. The state high court ruled 4-3 that election officials must count provisional ballots cast by voters whose mail-in ballots were voided because they arrived without mandatory secrecy envelopes. Republicans are also asking the high court to set the ballots aside while the challenge plays out. I'm Norman Hall.
Another day, another election lawsuit. This one from Virginia, where correspondent Jackie Quinn reports Old Dominion state leaders are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to allow them to purge hundreds of people from voter rolls. Again.
Virginia's Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin says he ordered elections officials to purge the names of people suspected of being non-citizens. But a federal judge restored the 1,600 names. A 3-judge appellate panel upheld that decision Sunday, saying the names were illegally purged, with no proof offered that the voters were not citizens. The plaintiffs, in fact, presented evidence some of those removed were citizens, saying there simply could be mistakes on voter forms submitted by the Department of Motor Vehicles. The state is now asking the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene. I'm Jackie Quinn.
In the latest lawsuit saga, Sean Diddy Combs is being accused of sexually assaulting a 10-year-old boy, and another lawsuit alleges Combs abused a 17-year-old who was auditioning for a reality show. Meanwhile, the New York City jail, where the disgraced music mogul is being held, has now been targeted by authorities. Correspondent Julie Walker has that report.
Investigators from multiple city agencies on Monday descended on a troubled New York City jail where Sean Diddy Combs is being held. The Bureau of Prisons says the interagency operation involves investigators from their office and the Justice Department and other law enforcement agencies at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. Combs' lawyers have highlighted a litany of horrors at the jail, including deplorable conditions, rampant violence, and multiple deaths, as they've made repeated attempts to get him released on bail while he awaits trial next May on sex trafficking charges. The hip-hop mogul's detention and a rash of crimes connected to the jail in recent months have only further galvanized public interest, leading to increased scrutiny. Julie Walker, New York.
An actor whose credits include parts on Better Call Saul and characters on Mama Named Me Sheriff and Bob's Burgers stood before a judge for his role in the January 6, 2021 riots at the U.S. Capitol. Following the case, correspondent Lisa Dwyer.
An actor known for his roles in the television comedies Bob's Burgers and Arrested Development has been sentenced to 1 year in prison for his part in the mob's attack on the U.S. Capitol nearly 4 years ago. Jay Johnston joined other rioters in a heave-ho push against police officers guarding a tunnel entrance to the Capitol during the January 6, 2021 riot. Johnston expressed regret for his conduct before being sentenced to 1 year and 1 day behind bars. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Boeing has had their troubles getting into space with failed capsules and scrubbed test flights, and now it looks like they might be selling off their space division. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech Report.
According to an article from the Wall Street Journal, Boeing may be trying to sell its space division. Boeing wants to sell some parts of its space business, including the Starliner spacecraft, while keeping components built for NASA's Space Launch System rocket. Kelly Ortberg, Boeing's newly appointed CEO, has hinted at the possibility of parting ways with the space-related portion of Boeing in a recent earnings call. Starliner has set back Boeing a whopping $1.85 billion in total losses. So far in the past 10 years, Boeing was contracted by NASA and has failed to deliver one operational mission to the space station, while its counterpart, SpaceX, has flown 9 astronaut crews to the ISS. The CTS-100 Starliner launched to the ISS on June 5th, and after thruster failures and helium leaks, the spacecraft was jettisoned, leaving the crew behind. And to add insult to injury, after failed flight tests, NASA has delayed the next Starliner mission. Follow me on X, @ChuckPalm.
Tuesday Sports is in. Here's America in the Morning's Robert Workman.
The Los Angeles Dodgers are just one win away from the World Series title after their 4-2 win over the Yankees in Game 3 last night. Shohei Ohtani started the game with a walk, then Freddie Freeman homered to right, giving him a dinger in each game so far, and in 5 consecutive World Series games dating back to 2021 when he was with the Braves.
Been seeing the ball very well, and obviously not missing mistakes. Hopefully we just can keep it going tomorrow. We got one more.
That ties the record set by Houston's George Springer. Mookie Betts and Kike Hernandez singled in runs in the 3rd and 4th. And Walker Buehler and a parade of relievers kept the Yankees off the scoreboard until the 9th. The Dodgers go for the sweep tonight with another bullpen game scheduled. The Pinstripers pin their hopes on rookie Luis Gil. Monday Night Football, the Steelers stopped the Giants 26-18. A field goal fest in the first half turned into the Calvin Austin III show in the second as he broke open a 9-9 tie with a 73-yard punt return to the house, then caught a 29-yard TD pass from Russell Wilson. Week 9 begins Thursday night with the Texans at the Jets, because we just can't get enough of that New York football this year, can we? NBA Paolo Banchero poured in 50 to lead the Magic past the Pacers 119-115. That's his career high and the first half 100 game in the association this season. Nuggets edged the Raptors in overtime for their first win. Nikola Jokic had 40. Celtics beat the Bucks to improve to 4-0. Cavaliers are 4-0 after rallying past the Knicks. Sun shaded the Lakers, giving LA its first loss. Elsewhere, wins for the Heat, Wizards, Bulls, Kings, Rockets, and Mavericks. NHL, John Tavares had a hat trick as the Maple Leafs handed the Jets their first loss of the season, 6-4. Winnipeg came into the game 8-0. It took 10 tries, but the Sharks finally picked up their first win, 5-4 over Utah in overtime. OT wins for the Lightning over the Predators and the Hurricanes over the Canucks. The Golden Knights snuffed out the Flames 5-0. Adin Hill only needed 16 saves for his first shutout of the season. Wins for the Blue Jackets, Panthers, and Blackhawks. That's Monday Sports.
Thank you, Robert. The most famous movie line in history? You be the judge when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. The family of actor Matthew Perry is reflecting on the one-year anniversary of his untimely death. Margie Zaraletta reports.
Matthew Perry's mother, Suzanne Morrison, says the one problem she could not conquer is that she could not help her son, but she is learning to stop blaming herself. Morrison tells NBC News it's heartbreaking that Perry brought so much joy but struggled to find it himself.
It must be said, I think, that he was also very lonely in his soul.
Morrison says she's thrilled that 5 people have been charged in Perry's death. She is now focused on supporting her daughter Caitlin, who runs the Matthew Perry Foundation of Canada to help addicts.
The one thing I have to learn very hard to do, and that's one of the reasons why I want to support Katie however I can, is you've got to stop blaming yourself because it tears you up.
I'm Margie Zaraletta.
Birthday for a film about a cyborg with a famous catch line that made a major star out of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Kevin Carr has that story.
An iconic character is celebrating its 40th birthday.
Hey, I think this guy's a couple cans short of a six-pack.
You're close. Give them to me.
This week in 1984, Orion Pictures released The Terminator. Directed by a then unknown James Cameron, this sci-fi action flick told the story of a cyborg sent back in time to kill its enemy's mother.
And it absolutely will not stop. Ever.
Star Arnold Schwarzenegger was a bodybuilder whose biggest credits were Hercules in New York and Conan the Barbarian. Rather than having Schwarzenegger play Sarah Connor's protector Kyle Reese, Cameron cast him as the Terminator, giving him only 17 lines of dialogue, which included his career catchphrase.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
I'll be back.
I'll be back. I'll be back. I'll be back.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
Criticized for its graphic gun violence at the time, the film went on to gross $38 million against a modest budget of $6.4 million. This made Schwarzenegger a movie star and galvanized Linda Hamilton as an action heroine. Even though he greatly enjoyed the film, science fiction writer Harlan Ellison threatened to sue the studio for plagiarism for his script of the 1964 Outer Limits episode Soldier.
He is geared for only one purpose: to kill the enemy.
The studio settled amid protest by Cameron. Even with international hits like Titanic and the Avatar movies under his belt, Cameron built a legacy with this film, which spawned 5 sequels and a television series. I'm Kevin Carr.
America in the Morning for Tuesday, October 29th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.